But Alex, look, millions of people did turn out for these No Kings protests. I mean, even the name is absolutely ridiculous. But Texas Senator Ted Cruz said that Republicans must take seriously the surge of political energy across the country that we're seeing. Listen to this.
Unquestionably, we should take political peril seriously. Number one, I think it's bad for America when one of our two major political parties has gotten so extreme and radical the way the Democrats are. I mean, they're a party that is unified behind hate for Donald Trump. But number two, politically, in terms of the midterms in 2026, it's dangerous. And I'm telling my colleagues, look, if the election in 2026 depends on results, I think we have a lot to campaign on. That being said, and you're exactly right, Julie, there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of anger on the left, and elections can be dangerous when one side is mobilized, is angry.
Alex, what do you make of that? Should Republicans be concerned about these protests heading into the midterms?
I think there is certainly a great deal of energy behind these protests. They're not so much organic, though. There's also a lot of money behind these protests. They're expensive. They have very nice looking props. I don't know how much it costs to buy a unicorn outfit, but I'm looking for Halloween costumes for my daughter, and they're not cheap. So somebody is funding these things. As long as they stay peaceful, I think that's great. The problem, though, is that they're not much of the time. The protests that do not get covered, that are not as fun to watch, and the people aren't laughing as often, are out in front of ICE facilities where people are throwing rocks. It's at night. People are getting in agents' faces. And that's really what the big problem is. And the Democratic Party doesn't want to see immigration law enforced. They think that cities are exempt from that. They think that just because local officials declare something as a sanctuary city, that they are immune from federal law, and they can just let people stay in this country forever, even though the American people clearly do not want that and want more people to go home.
Yeah, well, you mentioned some of the protesting and then some of the people that get quite violent. We've also seen protesters openly call for the president to be killed. These are some of the protesters that took to the streets as part of these No Kings rallies. Take a look.
There was a poll that just came out that said 50% of more left-leaning or Democrat Americans say that it would be justified to kind of unalive or kill Donald Trump. What would you say to them? Do you agree with them? Do you kind of tell them to pull it back? What do you think?
I fear I would agree.
Yeah, I do agree. I feel like, I don't know, it's like a really hard topic, but also I understand where they're coming from. It's, yeah.
Knowing how he's been. Hey! You ever heard about
Now, Emily, that last woman making that gesture was Lucy Martinez, just, of course, 1 month after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. She is an elementary school teacher, and looking at some of the viral reactions we have seen, plenty of people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, and some of those disgusting comments that you just heard, and people, and some of the extreme people taking part of the No Kings protests, calling for violence. I mean, some of these people, they're teachers and they're professors, Emily.
You know, if a conservative event, if a Trump rally had some of the signs that we saw from No Kings rallies over the weekend, there would have been a complete media circus, because there actually really were numerous instances of the one that we just saw, the example that we just saw, the teacher gesturing towards her neck with the gun symbol. There were examples of people, calling Stephen Miller a Nazi and saying Nazis must have been killed. And if the shoe were on the other foot, if that were something that a group of conservatives who had gathered in largely a peaceful fashion, but with people who were also saying that, the media would have completely melted down over it. Especially a month after a major political assassination, a historic political assassination. So I think we saw another glaring double standard on display on Monday when the networks came back and covered what happened over the weekend.
And we're seeing this rise of left-wing violence. So far in 2025, incidents of left-wing violence have risen, while those from the extreme right, I should say, have plummeted. Analysis by the Centre for Strategic and International Studies shows that left-wing violence has risen in the last 10 years in the United States. The number of terrorist incidents involving left-wing extremists so far this year puts 2025 on pace to be the left's most violent year in decades. Alex, can I get your thoughts on why this is happening?
It's a really good question. And as a pollster, I wanted to try and explore what's going on there, particularly with the ICE raids, because that's where a lot of the justification seems to be coming from right now. And so we put a question in our last poll, it's released now, about when you see something like an ICE raid, when do you think it is acceptable to go beyond peaceful protests, even if it means breaking the law? And about a quarter of all Americans said yes to that question, that they would go beyond peaceful protests. The vast majority of people do not want to break the law. But among Democrats, the results were really interesting, particularly young Democrats, 44 down to 18. They were plus 15 net on that question, which means 15 percentage points more than negative. Young Democrats said they would be willing to break the law. Older Democrats, older than 45, were negative 42 points. And so this is the crux that I see in the disagreement with the Democratic Party today. Young Democrats want to mix it up with people. They don't see a lot of value in these norms of nonviolence. They think that embracing a little bit of violence is fine. They're not worried about a slippery slope. Older Democrats, they want to go to those No Kings protests, and when they're done, they want to go to bed. They're older. They think that this is just another news story. It's going to pass. That is not how the young Democrats look at this.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, let's look at the Democratic Party and the names being thrown around for the 2028 presidential race. And a new survey shows that California Governor Gavin Newsom has suffered a setback in early polling. According to Nobel Predictive Insights poll, Kamala Harris is actually the one leading the 2028 Democratic field with support from 33% of Democrats and 27% of independents. Now, Newsom trailed behind, earning 13% of support among Democrats and just 3% among independents, and AOC ranked third with 8% of support among both Democrats and independents, followed closely by former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg at 7%. But a name that's also being thrown around is JB Pritzker, and here he is saying that Democrats are not for open borders, but then calls for illegals to stay in the country permanently.
But it starts with that anybody who's progressive is for open borders.
Well, some people are.
Well, I'll tell you that Democrats are not for open border. I mean, we had a real problem, and we needed to do something about the border. But now we need to do something about the people who work for you and work for other people who are here and law-abiding, doing the right thing, and they want to be good Americans. They want a path towards staying in this country, whether we call it citizenship or just legal residency. We need to give them that path, and we're not doing it today.
Emily, can you help me make sense of that? The Democrats are not for open borders, but then, of course, we heard from JP Pritzker essentially demanding that illegals be allowed to permanently stay in the country.
It's really rich, literally, from a billionaire in this case, to say that all of these people who come in and compete for a low-wage job should ultimately get the path to citizenship, and then also say that's not, quote, open borders. I want to know which parts of immigration law J.B. Pritzker actually believes should be enforced. Does it look like Chicago under Brandon Johnson? Does it look like America under Joe Biden? Because what we saw was essentially open borders. It was not literally technically open borders, but it was so lawless that it had the effect of essentially creating an open border system. And I want to know what part of the Biden administration J.B. Pritzker disagreed with, because we haven't heard much about that from Democrats who say they don't support open borders.
Alex, can I get your thoughts on the Democrats and the names being thrown around for 2028? We've got Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, she's back, AOC, and then Pritzker, who's making that argument about borders.
When I see that result that has Kamala Harris at the top, I'm reminded of phantom limb syndrome, when somebody gets an amputated limb and they think it's still there. That's what Kamala Harris's numbers are. She's just the last person. She's the last person they remember. She is a reflection of the real lack of options in the Democratic field, because she's I think she's the worst speaker in American politics today. She's on a book tour right now, and she's reminding everybody why she's not president. I think Gavin Newsom, the fact that his numbers are not higher means that what he is selling, people aren't buying. They're not excited about him. I think young people in particular are not excited about him. And to me, this is just a reflection of the Democrats being really disappointed, angry, and in a way to buy their field. They want other options, but I don't think this party is going to be able to give it to them.
Well, let's talk about the Republican options. ESPN host Stephen A. Smith ended his radio show on Thursday by predicting that no Democratic candidate has a real chance of beating a potential Republican presidential ticket of Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Listen to this.
Okay. Last tweet. Let's go with this right here, okay? Let's see what this is. At Nate City 11. Who has the best chance to defeat Vance and Rubio on the Democratic side in 2008? The answer would be no one. Not a damn soul. But I like Ossoff. I believe that's the correct pronunciation of his name. Also for Ossoff out of Georgia. I think that I like him. I like how he sounds. I do. But I got to be honest with you. If this Israel-Hamas deal comes out to be more positive than anything else, I don't think anybody's going to be able to compete with Marco Rubio, who Trump called maybe the greatest Secretary of State in American history. Marco Rubio gets things done. He's a former senator. He's now Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. He is no joke. I'd put him above Vice President Vance, I can tell you that much. Stephen A. signing off. Straight Shooter with Stephen A. Until next time, peace and love, everybody.
Emily, can I get your thoughts on this one?
I mean, Marco Rubio is a political talent and has been for a very long time. I believed that even when Marco Rubio was sort of on the outs with Trump, but now that he's back in Trump's good graces, that certainly will endear him to the MAGA base. And on top of that, he is fantastic at speaking. I mean, I think that's something that comes up every time he's giving a major address. People look at Marco Rubio and they say, wow, this guy is really good at it. And it's true, he is really good at it. So I do think of the two, Vance and Rubio has the edge in a way people might not quite realize. Since Vance is the sitting vice president, you would think he would be next in line, but that's probably why Trump himself is keeping his powder dry and letting them duke it out.
Alex, what are your thoughts?
I think that Vance is clearly the front runner. I think that he's the heir apparent. He'll have a fundraising advantage over everybody else that puts them to shame. If Rubio wants to compete for it, he's probably going to have to leave the administration fairly early. I don't think he wants to do that. I think he's doing a lot of good right now. I think he likes what he's doing. And so, Stephen A. Smith may or may not be right that Rubio would be willing to be a VP on a ticket with Vance at the top. But at this point, I think there are a lot of institutional advantages that Vance has. And to his broader point, the Democrats just don't have anybody that's going to be able to compete. And so today, if you had to peg it, the Republicans just have a big advantage. But today is a long way from Election Day. And so a lot can change before now and then.
That's certainly true. And we'll keep covering it until Election Day. Thank you both so much for joining us. Emily Jashinsky, host of After Party with Emily Jashinsky on MK Media, and Alex Tarascio, Cygnal Principal and Pollster. Appreciate you both joining the program.
Thank you.